Ladies and gentlemen, students, good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon panel discussion. This GYSS is the fourth year that we organize this summit. In fact, this summit, in a way, is supported by our president, Dr. Tien-Lin. The reason we started this summit is because we like to invite Nobel laureate and distinguished speaker to interact and to give lectures to research students, postdoc all over the world. So for the past 3 years, we've been doing a relatively good job. So we managed to invite students not only from Singapore, from Asia, Europe, and US. And each year, most of the participants are different. So we are very happy. The feedback from the students, they all feel that the summit, the conference has been really benefit. They really opened their eye to interact with the top scientists in the world. Since last year, our committee also feel that this we want to make this opportunity to let the public in Singapore to have an opportunity to listen to different scientists' opinion, lecture, and have a small group discussion. So the impact is not only to a small group of 300 students, it's really for the big group of the public, including high school students. So this year, we are also happy that number of our Nobel laureates who are able to interact with the high school students. So I'm sure you will be enjoying the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Phua. The panel discussion will start shortly, and we would like to now invite Professor Berto Anderson, President of NTU, on stage to introduce today's panelists. Professor Anderson, please.
Oh, thank you. Wow, nice to see so many people here that found a way to our art school. And of course, now we're going to talk about science in an art school, and I think that is very interdisciplinary, right? So, welcome. Of course, welcome to Singapore, to our guests, and particularly to our 3 laureates. And you see, we are really broad. There is physics, medicine, and chemistry. So that is good. We have it all covered. So you can ask any question you want. And you see, the magic thing with Nobel Prize winners is that, of course, they win the prize for some detailed discovery they do. But after they've been to Stockholm, they know everything. So you can ask them anything, you know, how to make Swedish meatballs or whatever, you know. That's fine. Welcome also to NTU. NTU, as you know, is the #1 university in Asia, according to all the bibliometrics. Of course, I have a little bit of a problem when I say that, because being #1 in Asia means also you're #1 in Singapore, right? Welcome also to the art school, as I said. So my story, I'm a poor Swede who got stuck here in Singapore. I've been here almost 9 years. When I came here, I spoke Swinglish, now I speak Singlish, so that's really progress, you know? But it is an exciting place to be in Singapore. It's almost as exciting as Stockholm in December. Singapore is really nice. And the government is very nice. They give us, the academics, a lot of money to do very interesting experiments and so on. Of course, when we talk about Nobel Prize, it's more Stockholm actually, because Alfred Nobel was a clever guy. I mean, he invented dynamite and he became filthy rich on that. But he was clever to give the money away for these prizes. And he hadn't done that, you have not been here, you know, and today. It's not Stockholm either. So And I have been involved in my previous life in choosing the Nobel Prize winners in chemistry. And we also have Lars Brink, who's sitting in the audience, who was chairing the physics committee. So we are well covered here. Yeah, right. And you know, I say it's more noble to give than to receive also. So anyway, it's exciting job actually to be in the Nobel Committee. We don't get medals and we don't get money. But it's exciting because it's a little bit like sitting on Piccadilly Circus of science to read about all exciting things in the various disciplines. So it's a good job. So thank us for providing us with interesting reading material, say 10, 20 years ago, or 30 years ago even. So, as I said, we have 3 prize winners here, covering 3 disciplines. Carlo Rubbia here. He's an Italian, Swiss. Yeah, maybe that's enough. Yeah. And he is a real veteran. He got his prize in 1984. I mean, many of you guys were not, I'm sure, was not even born then, you know. And he did it together with Simon van der Weer. And that was in physics. That is the physics prize. Don't hesitate. He's a physicist. And he got the prize together with de Meer for discovery of field particles W and C, and their bosons, I think they're called, and their communications of weak interactions. Of course, you have strong interactions, you have weak interactions, electrostatic. You see, I'm just a poor chemist, you know. And so that is what we call experimental particle physics. Of course, so you realize that the research of Professor Rubbia is very small research. But you see, he used very big equipment to study the small stuff, you know. And therefore he were at CERN in Geneva, which is not only big, it's also expensive. I've been in the Swedish Research Council, so I know it's very expensive. But quite useful, I would say. And of course, if you look at Nobel Prizes in Europe, it's not in Cambridge, it's not in Oxford, it's actually in CERN, in Geneva. I think there have been most European Nobel Prizes, so that's good. And also CERN has been fantastic for international collaboration. I think that is important to remember as well. I've been nice now, right? Yeah. So, and I think you've been in Singapore many times. Then we have Robin Warren, he sits there. And he's actually a neighbor. He comes from Perth, you know, it's only 4.5 hours flight or something like that to come here. So Singapore and Perth is almost, you know, twin cities. And he did studies of something called Helicobacter pylori and its role in gastritis and peptide ulcer diseases. And that is actually, I've been involved in the Nobel work for 20, 25 years. And this is actually one of the most popular Nobel Prizes. And we're going to discuss later on today about science, scientists, and society, and so on. And their prize, together with Barry Marshall, it was, in 2005, was killed a dogma, one could say. A dogma, you know, that ulcer, if you have ulcer, it was stress, it was sort of overproduction of chloric acid and stuff like that. But they showed, no, ulcer is just a bacterial infection. And that was really killing a dogma. And if you kill a dogma, in science, it may not entirely be easy. There's a lot of skepticism, you know, oh, these bloody idiots, they say, you know, that ulcer is bacteria. But they showed, but they were persistent, and in the end they were shown to be right. And in 2005, they could pick up the Nobel Prize. And it was very popular, because the longest applaud I ever heard during my time in Stockholm is that prize. So that's an interesting one. Welcome. Last but not least is Ori Warshall. He got his prize in 2013, so he's the rookie here. And now I got to brag a little bit. So of course he got his prize in December 2013. In June 2013, he came to NTU before he got the Nobel Prize. You see how clever we are in inviting people here, right? So, and he is sort of, he's an Israeli-American, I should say, and of course, Rob Warren is an Australian, of course, I forgot to say that. But you will hear that when he starts to talk later on. And Ari also got the one for multi-scale model for complex chemical systems, taking experiments to cyberspace, I read. Yeah. Very catchy. And of course you could say it was really taking advantage of computers to really simulate and explore chemical reactions. I mean, your picture of a chemist is someone that goes into the lab with a white, dirty lab coat and pouring things, you know, but today you can do it with a computer. So I think that was clever. And since I'm a biochemist, I was particular that most of his application has been in biochemistry and also for enzymes, together with Levitt and carbons. So that's the people we have here. Let's give them one more applause. So Paul has now decided, the organizer, that we're going to talk about science, scientists, and society, the 3 S, science, scientists, and society. And of course, we can talk about that. I'm sure there have been written books about it, how scientists create knowledge, create solutions to problems, I guess. But they also communicate science. If we scientists keep all our discoveries just for ourselves, I think that is bad and not so good. So it's very important to communicate science. And as I said, this is not going to be a problem for these guys, you know. They know about everything and they know these 3 things. And so we're going to have a discussion here at the stage for some 30 minutes. Then you have to wake up, because then you are the main actor. You're going to come here and ask questions, and we have 2 microphones there. So then I want to hear clever NTU questions to the panel. So that was my introduction. Then I look here at Professor Rubia. Of course, your science, as I said, is very small, right? So when you talk about W and Z particles, how do you explain it? I know you have a visitor's reception at CERN, where you try to explain this, but how do you talk to your friends what you actually are doing? You want me to say something? Yeah, absolutely. Use the mic.
So let me first of all use the microphone so you can hear me. Thank you very much for this very nice occasion, presentations. As you already mentioned at the beginning, I had my Nobel Prize 32 years ago.
Wow.
And I believe at that time, probably more than half of the students today were not born yet. So I'm just seeing myself projected into a timetable which is far beyond the one on which you are centered upon. And I think that it's very important that we are here and we stay here into a university-oriented communication. In fact, science and technology must be also related in universities and to things. A purely industrial operation will not give them the richness of things for very good reasons. Most of the most important work that every one of us has done was when we were a graduate student. Our thesis of graduate student has been really the right thing to do, which you remember the rest of your life. Then it becomes ordinary business, but it's a very important question. So I have enjoyed my time quite closely, quite early, with the university system. Far before getting, the Nobel Prize, I've been for more than 18 years a professor in an American university, Harvard University, which is one of the most beautiful university places.
Fairly reputable as well.
What?
Fairly reputable also.
Well, probably, yes. And anyway, let me tell you two little stories about this to give you the feeling how Harvard was when I was a student. One day, when I got a Nobel Prize, I went to see the president of the university, your equivalent, and I told him that now that I have a Nobel Prize, perhaps you could make a little bit of effort and give me a little more money. Because, you know, in America, you know, a very rule, if you are important, you have to make money. Because without money, you're nobody. So under those circumstances, I went to see him and say, hey, Professor Buck, can I get a salary raise? And the man looked at me with great joy and happiness. He said, but when we hire you, we did not expect anything for less. So you have done nothing that you are not supposed to do. So we will not give you any extra money for your success. It was so obvious that you had to be in a Nobel Prize to be there. That
I heard in Berkeley, at least you get a parking lot.
That's right. Now, let me tell you another story about the same thing, about also students. I was asked to be in the commencement speech of several universities in the world, and one of them was Boston University. And Boston University is a very beautiful university, which has a huge stadium, which is the Boston Stadium, where you have tens of thousands of people. So I went there to get my speech prepared very carefully. And when I go there, I walked into this beautiful day of fantastic sunshine with tens of thousands of students and other people sitting around. It was quite an impressive thing. And then I go there, dressed with all these things that you get when you get, you're supposed to be an honorary professor. And I start talking. And then suddenly, after 2 minutes of my talk, I hear everybody laughing. But you don't know what it means to have 20,000 people laughing. It's an incredible explosion of noise and everything like this. So I didn't know whether it was something stupid I said, or whether my language was incorrect, or whatever it was. Why should everybody laugh at me when I start making my commencement speech? And then I saw the president of the university, which was nearby, like you are here today, and he indicated up, and he said, look upstairs. So I look upstairs, I look at the sky, and what do I see in the sky? I see a little airplane, which was flying across the stadium, and on the airplane there was a banner behind, and the banner was saying, Lucy, now that you're married, you can marry me. And that was because in fact this succession situation, I think I tell you enough jokes, maybe somebody else has to tell you other jokes.
Very good, thank you. So, Professor Warren, okay, so you made your experiments for many years when you thought that ulcer actually had something to do with an infection. I think you do biopsies and you found bacteria or something like that. But you wrote somewhere that actually the public and patients were quite open to your suggestion, but the experts were not. So do we have a problem, you know, when we talk about scientists, that they can be quite conservative?
Well, actually, I think it's probably fair enough that the senior doctors are fairly conservative. They're treating their patients and they don't sort of start using every latest thing that comes along. They keep on using the well-known therapies that work properly. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, really.
To a certain extent.
To a certain extent, yes. But it was interesting what we did find when our papers were published, which really we were suggesting quite definitely that ulcers were due to these bacteria. It was taken up by the New York Times. And the science section of the New York Times gave us 2 full pages. And, you know, that's really not bad in the New York Times. And this was copied by papers around the world, in particular in some of the major papers in Australia. They printed it in ordinary type and just made articles this big, but they were in articles, in newspapers, particularly all around Australia. And these were read by patients with ulcers. And they went to their local GP and demanded to be treated, or asked to be treated. So we got letters from numerous GPs wanting to know how to treat these patients. And so we were sending letters out. I mean, I had a list made of all the different therapies that they could use, and I just sent this out to all these GPs that were sending letters to us. And apparently, while the upper class doctors, you know, the specialist gastroenterologists weren't interested, the GPs were, and they were particularly interested when they found they treated these patients successfully. And suddenly, instead of being constantly badgered by people with ulcers, which was a nasty disease, and continually bad, racking pain. Yeah. Well, instead of this pain, they treated them the way we said, and these patients were okay. So the GPs were happy to do that, but the specialists, as you say, weren't for a while. It gradually changed.
But I remember there was this experiment. I don't know if it was you or Barry who did that. They drank the bacteria and got ill and then took antibiotics. Is that true, or is that a story?
It's true that Barry did that, yes.
Oh, Barry did it, okay.
Yeah. I didn't do it, actually.
Okay, you didn't dare to, what?
I think it was rather unfair. Barry came into my room one day and said, oh, let's take a dose of bacteria and infect our own stomachs and see what happens. And I said, wow, I'm doing this. Because I think, you know, Barry had been turning this over in his head for months.
Oh, really?
And then he just suddenly came in and suggested it to me like that, you know. Anyway.
Did he publish that?
He did, yeah.
Okay.
But that's interesting. It's an interesting story because he went out and decided just to do it. So he went out, got a culture from the microbiology department and had a sort of a liquid culture and drank it. Gave himself a very severe active gastritis and made himself very sick.
Yeah, he really turned sick.
Yeah. And his wife, he never asked her about it. And apparently she was furious when she found out that he was sick because he infected his own stomach.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So then he gave himself a therapy that he worked out himself and worked properly and cured it, just like that.
But that was conventional antibiotics, or?
Conventional antibiotics, but with 2 or 3 antibiotics at once.
Yeah.
And that got rid of the infection. And in his case, it cured it instantly pretty well.
Yeah.
But he was biopsied first and it showed the bacteria and the inflammation, and that's pretty well enough to fulfill Koch's postulates to show that the bacteria were causing the damage, which was the idea. But at the time, we'd been badgering all the senior people, particularly Barry, because he was my mouthpiece, really. He was a pathologist working in a laboratory, and I didn't really say much, but Barry was saying, well, lots to everybody. And apparently they were starting to say that, I mean, this happened particularly at one of the college meetings. They thought he was mad.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Someone was saying he was mad.
Yeah.
So he came along to me and said, don't say anything about that I've been drinking the bacteria. Then they'll really think I'm mad.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, a year later, he published it in the Australian Medical Journal.
Okay, so he was himself in Materials and Methods.
Sorry?
He was himself in the paper, he was in the Materials and Methods section as well.
Possibly after that, yes, I don't know.
Very good, thank you very much. And Ari, so when you started with chemistry and computers, have you really done a real chemical experiments?
I've done 2 experiments.
Uh-huh.
One is undergraduate where
Okay.
to see how enzyme works, and
Yeah.
got the wrong conclusion. I conclude that electrostatic is not important
All right.
because I changed the ionic strength, and
Ah.
it looks so.
Very clever.
My boss convinced me to publish in the Israeli Journal of. So I have a leading thing only in abstract, which is opposite to what I found later.
So when did you
No,
start?
but then when I was doing PhD, I deodorated lactams, so I have to measure the infrared. So I did
Very impressive,
one
very
experiment,
impressive.
yes.
So when did you start? When did you really start to do it with the computers? What was the first simulation you made?
No, first I have to check my calculations on small molecules.
All right, we are really small.
And this took until I finished the PhD.
Yeah.
And only when I came back from the postdoc, I already want to work on enzymes since my undergraduate. I kind of say that one day I will figure out how they work. Yeah. And when the PhD progressed and I saw how powerful are these computer programs, I thought more seriously, and when I came back from the postdoc, I basically figured out how to study enzymes and keep pushing it. Essentially, there were major objections, maybe even now by the biochemists, because the last...
It's not real chemistry.
Yes, no, the last thing that they want is that somebody will tell them how enzyme works. So,
We don't need to do structure studies of X-rays or electron microscopy anymore, I guess.
no, we need this. We start from the structure. It will take a little while until you predict the structure.
Very good. As you see now, these three men knows everything. So if you have any kind of questions here now, so any kind of questions, you can now ask them. So I think now it's question time. Question time. So there are the two microphones, and of course you should line up as very civilized ones. And I always have to say this, it's very hard to get Singaporeans to ask the first question. So why don't we go directly to the second question? So please. Because if you don't, yeah, good, that's what I like. You have to run, oh, you get the microphone, that's great. And you say who you are and who you want primarily to answer your question.
Yeah, so I'm Olivia, a exchange student from Italy actually. So I wanted to ask to Prof. Rubia, I'm here for my master thesis about hydrogen technologies. And I would like to know what's your opinion and if you see like a future for the so-called hydrogen economy, what we read a lot about.
Hydrogen economy?
Yeah.
Okay. This is more, you worked on energy, so this has to do with energy. What do you feel in the future? Can we rely on the hydrogen economy?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I will give a lecture tomorrow to describe.
You can do it now. You can do it now.
No, I will not waste your time